Alzheimer's. When you hear that word, what is your response? Or your faith community? How do you as people of faith respond to a person who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's? And maybe another question we need to ask is, how do we, as a society, as a community, respond to the issue of Alzheimer's? We're going to explore that on Austin Faith Dialogue, and we hope you'll stay right there with us.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg, host of the program. And as a parish pastor, one of the experiences I have is walking with families through the experiences of life. And when a diagnosis comes that one of my own, one of my parish family, has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, that's a tough time. And we don't know just where we're going to go with that. But the one thing I do know is that I want to respond to them with a sense of commitment and support, not having all the answers. Maybe you feel like that also. And I have some people with me that will give us maybe some help. Amy from Alzheimer's Association, welcome. Glad that you are here. Thanks. You've been to our congregation and shared, and I'm glad you're with us in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Thank you very much.
And Terry, this is going to be fun to have you along because you have quite a personality, and so I'm interested in hearing what your story is all about.
Thank you very much.
Terry, Alzheimer's is a powerful word. We talked before we came on the air about your experience with Alzheimer's. Talk about that. Your mother, is that correct?
That's correct. My mom, let me just give you a little bit of background, short and sweet. She was a little Polish peasant lady. She was born in Poland, emigrated here in '51 through Ellis Island and all, and she never changed. The disease, when it hit her, nobody knew what was going on. She always said, don't let them know that it's Alzheimer's disease. You know, that, and we said, no, Mama, it's not, we promise. She didn't drive. She spoke English, but she spoke Polish to me. And we had a very close Polish-knit family. They lived in Florida in their retirement. And we saw about 15, 20 before her death that things were starting to change. But they were subtle, you know, little things. I remember one time when I visited, my mom said to me, you know, I can't find my way around the mall anymore. And I said, well, Mama, if you go into a store and walk out to your left, and every store you walk into, walk out to the left, you'll ultimately get back to the store you started with. And she said, good idea, good idea. And you know, little things started creeping up. And
how old was she then?
Oh, 60s, you know. We almost didn't think it was anything more than just being stressed, forgetful. And she was always feisty. I think that had something to do with it. She died 3 years ago. Physically, she didn't suffer as much as some people do, although I don't know, you know, not having had her reality. But the suffering that she suffered was, I think, knowing that, you know, something was happening, something was going wrong, and she didn't know what.
You know, I want to talk about not only her suffering, which is very powerful in your life, and I can see that, but also the suffering that the family experiences, and so we'll pursue that. But Amy, give us a little statistics, some numbers. What about the Alzheimer's numbers? How many people have Alzheimer's?
They say right now about 4 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease, but that number is expected to nearly quadruple in the next 50 years. Our baby boomers are going to hit 65 pretty soon, and that puts them in the highest risk category.
It's pretty scary to some of the people watching this program.
It's terrifying. It's an absolutely terrifying thing. We don't know how to stop it yet. We don't know how to prevent it. If you're 85 or older, you will have a 50-50 chance of developing Alzheimer's, and that's very frightening. It's estimated here in Central Texas we have about 25,000 people with Alzheimer's. I would say that's a very low number. And they say there's 3 caregivers to every 1 patient. So you look at 75,000 caregivers in Central Texas that are going kind of through what Terry was, lost, and what do I do next? And then the grief of watching your loved one decline to a point where they need total care. It's unbelievable.
Amy, you said the Alzheimer's Association in Austin is 20 years old, is that correct?
Actually, the national organization is 20 years old.
So that's relatively within the past 2 decades that we become aware of this disease called Alzheimer's.
Exactly. It was originally identified in the early 1900s by Dr. Alois Alzheimer, but because we didn't live as long, we didn't see as much Alzheimer's disease, and your highest risk factor is just getting older. So now that we're living longer, we're seeing more and more of it. But it's a very real disease, and it's not a mental illness. I think a lot of people have thought for a long time that it was a mental illness. This is a real disease we can look at under the microscope.
That's debilitating.
Incredibly debilitating. You know, it starts with that memory loss, that kind of stuff we tend to joke about. It's not really funny, like Terry said, but we tend to joke about Alzheimer's disease and getting senile. But the reality is that you eventually forget everything. You forget how to dress yourself, toilet yourself. You forget the people you love. Your environment doesn't look familiar anymore, and you eventually die from the disease because you forget how to swallow, and you forget how to breathe, and your heart forgets to beat. So it's a terminal illness.
Terry, I've seen courageous people in our congregation deal with their loved ones in difficult circumstances. And I remember one man who I used to enjoy so much. He was from South Dakota. And as you mentioned, Amy knows everybody's story. That's the way it is with a parish pastor. I get to know their stories. And he was a man who had been raised in a home of faith, and they loved to sing. And so when he first moved to Austin, we'd ride around and sing and do things. And he was in a political party, and we would go back and forth and discussing politics and all that kind of good stuff. And then he started, as you said, Amy, forgetting. And I watched his wife during the years, and then he was placed into a home. And I watched his wife, and, you know, it's not just he who was suffering. And in a sense, maybe he wasn't suffering so much because he really didn't know what was going on.
Exactly.
Is that truth? Is that all right? I say that, and I think maybe that's harsh to say that.
May I? I mean,
yeah.
a lot of time when I get a call at the association, a helpline call, people calling for help.
And you volunteer there, the helpline
yes.
is right?
Usually they're caregivers. Sometimes it's a person newly diagnosed. And no, what was I going to say? You see, now, no, before, you know, this is the kind of thing that happens, and I apologize, but you know, I was going to say, oh, I've got Alzheimer's, but you know, because it's joked about. We joke about it, but I really forgot what I was telling you. It was so fascinating.
On the suffering part, as far as the patient goes,
right.
They're still able to feel pain. They're still able to absorb their environment. It's just they may not be able to express an appropriate response to it.
Right.
But at some point, they do forget that they forget. So maybe they don't suffer that heartbreak of losing their memory.
But you
like
and those who call the helpline, then they are the ones who are going through a sense of
They're as
suffering.
sick, if I can use that disease, they're as much a patient as the person they're calling about. I know you just noticed my pin.
Can we get a shot of that?
It's
pin?
a gorgeous
Yeah,
pin. I don't know which
Amy's
camera's
also wearing one, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Hers is gold because, you know, she's the star. But it's our association pin. And
Don't cover it up. Let us
oh,
see.
sorry. Okay. 2 people standing together, kind of leaning on each other. And I like to tell people, we don't tell you who's the patient and who's the caregiver, because in Alzheimer's, there really are 2 patients. The caregiver is as much in pain, even perhaps more so, because as a patient regresses downhill and downhill, they forget, their sense of reality changes, you know, but you see them. You not only remember what they were like 25 years ago, 5 years ago, and you see this, and not only does your heart break, but you feel totally, totally helpless. With coronaries, there's medication. With, you know, there's nothing, there's no
And
magic
so the question
pill.
I asked at the beginning of the program was, what's the response? And if you're feeling this kind of helplessness, where do you go? And is it possible then you go to the Alzheimer's Association, Amy? Is that a place where people like Terry are waiting to help you on the helpline? Or what are some of the things that the Alzheimer's Association can do for a person who's saying, I'm drowning?
Right. On the national level, we're trying to find a cure. So that's a very close, real thing that may be happening in the future.
Oh, let me stop you there. The
Sure.
cure, that's a big thing, all right?
It's a huge thing.
And what are we
That's a good
talking?
solution.
I think you're
We're waiting on that.
But that takes lots of money.
Lots
Research,
and lots of money.
that type of thing. Where does the association get our money?
Friends and strangers, just contributions. There is some government funding for research, but very little. The rest comes through contributions.
Corporations get involved?
Corporations get involved, individuals. There are wonderful people out there that donate personal dollars of $1 million or more just to find cures. But even a dollar here and a dollar there goes a long way. On the local level, what the Alzheimer's Association can do is be your first stop. You know, call us. We have a helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where people like Terry are on the line that can answer your basic questions.
What is that? I'm hesitant to ask you this, Terry. You know? but
I'll be
the number,
brief.
what if people wanted to call the helpline? What is that number? What do they call?
454-5476.
454-5476.
That's
So
right.
if someone who's watching Austin Faith Dialogue would say, I need to reach out to these people, there'd be someone there 24 hours a day?
Correct.
7 days a week, is that right?
Correct, yes. And it may be
That's
just to
tremendous.
listen to you cry if that's what you need. We also have information on nursing homes, assisted livings, different resources for financial needs, educational needs. One of the best ways to deal with Alzheimer's is learn all you can. Everything you can get your hands on, every class you can take, everything you can read, and we offer all of that through our chapter. Plus support groups, which is another great way for families to talk with other people about what they're going through, so you feel like you're not alone.
And the best part, Pastor, most of it, if not all of it, is free. Can you imagine getting so much information and help for free? You know, and we get so little of the government's, I don't know the specifics like Amy does, but we get so little of the government's money, you know, as far as other health organizations.
Terry, what about you? As your mama, she sounds like she's a wonder. She sounds like a lady I'd like to hug. You know,
yes,
she must have been
yes.
a very
In
special
fact,
lady.
If you ask nicely, and I know you will, I will send you her famous pierogi recipe,
Ooh.
which a letter about
Oh.
and got some response about.
And that's the way she continues to live on then in all of your lives.
Yeah,
And those
you know,
kind of
Christmas
traditions.
is coming, and one of the last memories I had, in fact, the Christmas before she died, she came with my father, and ooh, I don't look good when I cry.
Talk to us.
She made pierogi, and you know, it's like a little dumpling filled with cheese and potatoes, sauerkraut sometimes, and you know, she can do it like.
The Pope would love something like
Oh.
that, right?
Listen, the Pope, I know, gets his share of pierogi.
That's wonderful.
But I remember her at the kitchen table, and she never used a bowl. You know, it's just that old table routine thing. And every time Christmas comes, I know how to make them, but I don't want to lose that sight of
Terry,
her doing it.
let's meet over at the Alzheimer Association sometime during the 12 days of Christmas.
Okay.
And you bring some of that.
I would-
And
I-
Amy and I will have
I have
say the
yet
word
to
again.
have one,
What is
so
it
I'm
called?
looking forward- Pierogi.
Yeah,
Not that pierogi. And let me tell you, the Russians did not invent it. Like everything they take credit for, the Polish did it first.
You are feisty. You said your mother was feisty.
My
and maybe
mother gave
that's
me
part of the legacy then,
Yes,
Terry,
that's how
that
she
she
lives
has
on.
left for all of you and your
Yeah.
family and your sibling.
Terry's been able to take her experience and really be able to share it with other families, and it's so important to be able to do that. And she's just such an incredible volunteer, not only on the helpline, but running support groups when we need her to, teaching classes, and that's how she can turn that grief into something positive to share with other people.
Well, and that's what we're going to talk about as we continue this discussion about Alzheimer's, and we hope you'll stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue. I was just telling Amy, and now Mary Jane is with us on the set, about a special person in my life who is Alzheimer's now, and how when I went to see him most recently, he asked me if I would open the gate for him so he could leave. And I remember the days when this man could share with me laughter and ice cream and hot guts, as he called it, and a very special man of faith who was so loyal to his congregational community. And one would never have thought, Amy, that Alzheimer's would come to him. But maybe that's the way it is. Mary Jane, tell us, as Terry talked about her mom, tell us about your mother. She's still living, I understand. Is that right?
Yes, my mother's still living. My mother's 86. She'll be 87 next month. This month, I'm sorry. And Mom was diagnosed when she was 81. And we did have her diagnosed through a doctor. My mother was a very strong person. My mother was our main caregiver when I was young. My father was disabled. And so my mother was the one that did all the work. I had a Mr. Mom before there was a Mr. Mom movie, because my dad was the one that took us to school and brought us back, and Mom worked. And after Dad passed away, Mom was the one that paid the mortgage, paid the bills. My mom had no education. My mom self-taught herself to read and write in Spanish. Yeah. So
a very wise woman and a strong
very,
woman.
very.
And you said before the program started, you mentioned that she was very active in her parish life.
Very active. We kind of joke because all of us girls, there's 4 girls, and we're all Mary something. We're all named after the Blessed Mother, so we're all Mary something. Very, very active in her church. I always used to say that if Mom had died in the dining room hall of our church, she would have died happy. But yeah, she taught us our religion. And
what happened when your mother was diagnosed? What happened to you as daughters, as family, when the doctor said Mother has Alzheimer's?
I think that we became much closer, we were already close, but I think we became much closer. There are 3 main caregivers in our family. All 3 of us are girls. I have a brother, but he doesn't deal too well with it. And so we share the caregiving. We have a main caregiver because my mom lives 70 miles from Austin. So we have a main caregiver in her hometown in Lampasas. And then
And that's your sister, correct?
My sister, yes. She's the oldest one.
Another Mary?
Mary or Linda, and she goes by Linda. And then my sister Mary Loy lives here with me. We share a house. And she has recently retired, so she goes home a week, 2 weeks, and then comes back, relieves my other sister. And then I'm still working, and so I go home on weekends. And then I take over the duties.
You became closer as siblings. Now you saw yourselves in a different relationship with your mother. She who had been the one who had been your caregiver, now you became her caregiver.
Yeah.
What has it taught you? What has it taught you spiritually? You're a person of faith. What are some of the lessons? You mentioned that your pastor goes and sees Mother, and that the deacon goes to see Mother.
I think that all of us, because we were of strong faith, I think that all of us went through being very angry with God, very angry with Him. And that didn't last too long, though, thank God. We prayed a lot about it. And so I think that our faith has really, really been there for us. I have to say, in my own situation, because my sisters, I think, have a little different outlook, and I was telling Amy last week that a lot of times with Alzheimer's, I think you've heard the long goodbye. Some people refer to the long goodbye. I tend to look at it and I say, hello, what am I going to see today? What am I going to discover today? So I say hi to something instead of goodbye to something. A lot of people say goodbye to, because we're losing our mom.
Right.
And we're losing the person that we knew.
But you have this time to be with Mom and to go on this kind of pilgrimage together and some new experiences, whereas Terry's mother is gone. You still have your mother, and you have this opportunity to say hello to some new experiences. And Amy, that's an interesting way of putting a different light on this experience.
I think that is what has made this family be able to pull together and deal with it in such a special way. She just blew me away when she said that she says hello to things, because the most recent thing that she had to say hello to was putting her mother on a liquid diet because her mother can't swallow anymore. Most of the rest of us would lay down and not get up. You know, that's something you say goodbye to. But they have become so strong. And I hear so many families that when it's over and they come out on the other side, they're so much stronger spiritually. They learn so much about patience and love and understanding and what it means to give to another person, because you, as a caregiver, you give your heart, your soul, your money, your time, every bit of you.
It demands so much of a person,
Right.
this disease.
We're there every day for my mom, every day. She's in a nursing home now, but at noontime, my older sister Linda goes and feeds her. We walk her because she can still walk. We have bathroom duties with her, and then we lay her down for her afternoon nap. At night, at 5 o'clock, we're there again. We do the same routine, except at nighttime we say her prayers for her. So, that we're there every day, every day.
What a beautiful story. And I think what it says to our viewing audience of Austin Faith Dialogue, that all of these emotions that people feel, the anger that you mentioned, the confusion, the fear, all of this can be affirmed and said, this is what it's like to be human. And indeed, in that midst of that humanity, we can call upon, as Amy said, these other gifts of God, of love and patience. And Mary Jane, can there even be laughter in the midst of this sorrow?
A lot of laughter with my mom. In her early stages, my mom is a very passive person. My mom became a little aggressive. And my one incident that I always think about and laugh is she thought one of my blouses was hers, and I kept saying, Mom, it's mine, and she was like, it's mine, and we were tug of war.
On your blouse.
And as I think back now, that was quite funny.
Well, Terry described her mother as being feisty, and it sounds to me like this good Spanish woman that you're describing was pretty feisty too, not as passive.
And became even more so. But
well, Amy, you work with a lot of different volunteers, and your title is at the Alzheimer Association
Development Director.
And what does that mean?
I do the fundraising. I was the program director for the past 2 years, providing all the services and the helpline and all those different things that we do for the community.
And you did that so well, they said we're going to make her into development director. Is that right?
Just went a different direction.
What a promotion.
What's nice, I'm still able to really get out and share our story with different groups, and I think that's what's important, is that we spread the word about what it is and what it means to suffer through Alzheimer's disease, and that there is help for you, whether that's through your spiritual community. The Alzheimer's Association, Austin in particular, has a wealth of resources, both for-profit and non-profit. You just have to know where to look.
Where is the Alzheimer's Association? Where are you located?
We're located in the Austin Groups for the Elderly building, 3710 Cedar, which is 38th and Guadalupe. Yeah.
And in that building, there are all kinds of resources.
There are. There's an adult daycare center, Elder Haven, downstairs from us, and then lots of other programs for seniors and different people that deal with the elderly.
And when I came to seek you out, I found you up on the second floor. Is that right?
We are.
And if people would come into that office, what would they find in there? What are some of the resources available?
Oh, goodness. We actually have just opened a full office just for our lending library, and we have books, brochures, videos that people can access, tons of articles and copies. Like I said, educating yourself is so much a part of it. And you will always find somebody that will have time to sit down with you, to talk it through, to connect you with resources, and then just to listen and let you know what's normal or not. There's so much to learn. Simple things like, okay, Mom's fighting me for a blouse. What do I do? You know, the best thing you can learn to do is let them win.
Yes.
Person with Alzheimer's, just let them win and be able to walk away.
And in that process of letting them win, then you also, as family, you win.
Exactly.
Because you share that time in a way that is positive rather than a way that is
I have to say this. When I first became a volunteer for Alzheimer's, my mom, when we were driving, and my mom didn't drive, but she was a passenger, and so she would say, okay, mija, which is daughter in Spanish, okay, mija, you have to turn this way. And I would think, Mom doesn't know Austin. Why does she want to go that way? Or she would want her mother, who I never knew. So, and And so
Would
I
you talk about
decided-
her? Would you let her talk about Grandma?
Well, I didn't know what to do because
Well, Amy, let's ask Amy. What should
Yeah.
you do in a situation like that?
Talk. The recent events go very quickly as the brain is destroyed, but those things from way past are very deeply ingrained. Reminiscing is one of the best things that you can do. And if they think somebody's there who's not, it doesn't matter. That's fine. For whatever reason, they're seeking their mother, and let's talk about their mother and what that means to them.
You mentioned as the brain is being destroyed. That's heavy-duty conversation, you know, and that's... Talk a little bit about that. What does that mean when to say that the brain is being destroyed?
Yeah, the nerve cells in the brain are literally dying away. And like I said, we don't really know why. It could be multiple factors that are involved. But as they die, it makes chemical imbalances in the brain, which causes mood and behavior disturbances. And then you just lose those abilities one by one. And it's kind of this steep slope that you just keep slipping down. And there are some medications to actually slow it down now. That can
So we have made some progress, is that right?
We have. There are 2 drugs on the market right now that can help people to maintain their abilities longer, but it has to be given in the early stages. So we really encourage early diagnosis. Don't think that because when somebody's losing their memory, it's just part of getting older. It's really not normal to lose your memory as you get older.
Oh, that's also interesting, isn't it?
Profound.
That is.
It's normal to have more difficulty finding responses, take a little bit more time, but to forget how to operate your washing machine or lose your way on the way to church that you've gone to for 20 years is not a normal occurrence.
And what about the medical community? Where can they be helpful?
The medical community can be helpful by particularly watching patients that they've had over the years and watching for those signs, but just being aware that you can diagnose Alzheimer's disease and there are symptoms to watch for. And we can, at the Alzheimer's Association, refer you to physicians that do a good job of that.
You know, Amy, Terry at the beginning of the program called you a star. That's why you have that gold on it.
She's too kind.
And Mary Jane would, I think, second that
too
probably.
right, I do.
But have you ever had an Alzheimer's person in your family?
I have not, though I am probably the only one in our office who hasn't. I think that my grandfather had Alzheimer's disease. He was a very dear man, very kind and loving. And though I didn't see him in his later years, he lived up north somewhere, I heard that he actually became quite aggressive with the grandchildren, and that was not a normal occurrence for him. So I anticipate that's what it was.
What have you learned from working with Alzheimer's people?
Oh my gosh.
Their families?
I take something home every day. I do a support group out in Round Rock and am just so amazed, and by people like Terry and Mary Jane, about strength, about love. I have never experienced trauma like these families have. And that there is a way through it and there are positives. And if you look at it in the right way and you say hello to the new things and not goodbye, you really can learn. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
Sure,
Terry, thank
thank
you.
you.
And thank you all for being with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. And when you hear the word Alzheimer's, maybe your response will be Alzheimer's Association. But remember, your response comes from you and that faith and that trust that it belongs to you. Thank you for being with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. Peace be with you and yours.